Herr Präsident!
Member States thinking they might block Mr Juncker, he then ran into the new golden rule of EU politics, which is when Mrs Merkel speaks, the other heads of state obey. And the support for us simply melted away. You would have thought when in a hole stop digging, but no, Dave kept on digging away. And I must say, as the final vote approached, it began to feel a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, where it doesn't really matter how good the British entry is, such is the dislike of our country around much of Europe, that we're always going to lose. I wonder what the prospects are now for renegotiation. Well, Mr Juncker has had a rough ride in the British press. We're told that he drinks cognac for breakfast. Yeah, I know that is not in the UKIP manifesto, I promise you. We're told he's Juncker the drunker. We're told he's a smoker. My God, isn't that awful? Some have even said that he drinks endless cups of black coffee, which is why he looks so old. I can't see him being in any mood to concede. And back to Mrs Merkel. She made it clear after the summit, when Cameron challenged the principle of ever closer union, she very gracefully said that we're all allowed to move at different speeds towards ever closer union, but we must continue in the same direction. We've got a referendum coming up at some point in the not too distant future in Britain. There is one thing that would convince the British voters to vote to remain part of a European Union, and that is a fundamental treaty change that says we no longer have to accept untramelled access to countless millions of people from across the whole of Europe. We need, and the British people demand, 80% of them want us to get back control of our borders so we can choose who comes to Britain. Now, having lost 26-2 in the last vote in the Council of Ministers, we're going to need to do this, to succeed with this, to end total free movement. We're going to need the support of the European Parliament. Are you going to help Britain to end the free movement of peoples? I don't think so. Are we going to win 28-0 in the Council of Ministers? I don't think so. It isn't going to happen. We're whistling in the wind, and we are closer now to exit than ever. And for the rest of the EU, I suspect the next 5 years will bring endless misery for the southern Mediterranean Eurozone countries. That perhaps is reflected by the number of Italians we now have in our group. And what have we seen in the last 48 hours? We've seen naked militarism, with the EU flag being virtually goose-stepped round the yard. We've seen the European...
in the past. It is not driving change, it's trying to block it. And I have to say, Mr Farage, with enthusiastic support of that side of the House. Because you talk about that side of the House like Eurosceptics. Eurosceptics are people who may have doubts about Europe. But that is not actually the case. Because over here I see a collection of people ranging from downright anti-EU to anti-immigration, homophobic and anti-Semitic forces, and not just middle-of-the-road Eurosceptics. It is indeed time for change. It is not the time to paralyse the EU even further or dismantle it, but we need to make it stronger and better able to act and to respond adequately to the expectations of our citizens, in particular the ones who are going through very rough times at the moment. We need more democratic legitimacy and not less. And therefore I would like to take up the words of Mr Kamal and say